Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another preseason episode of the MLS Now podcast. I'm your host, Russell. You can find me on social media at Mr. Danger Russ. More importantly, though, you can find the podcast on social media at MLS Now Podcast. Or, alternatively, maybe neither of those tickle your fancy and you're thinking to yourself, Russell, I really don't care about anyone else in the league other than Orlando City specifically. And if that is your thought, well, then I've got great news for you because you can find our wonderful guest, our, normal co-host, really, on social media at LionsBlog1, Gavin. Hello.
I was about to say downgraded to guest. That's insane.
Well, Gavin, I don't know if you know this, but you did access our recording studio through the guest link, so it technically makes you a guest.
I did, because we can't have two people logged into the same account in the same call. It wouldn't make sense. It would mess something up. We would have problems.
It would mess a lot of things up. It would cause problems, but Gavin, that is a risk that I am just not willing to take, and that's why I remain as the host and you are the guest.
Whatever.
But enough about that, Gavin. You are actually taking the guest role today because you're here to walk us through and talk extensively and with great insight and detail about Orlando City. We're doing all these preseason content episodes. We have an enormous number of them. When you hear this may be the first or potentially the second one that you're hearing, depending on when we get these out and in what order they go up.
And what order you listen.
Yeah, and what order you listen. For all we know, you listen to this one last, in which case this is, late breaking news. And you're thinking to yourself, Russell, I know you did preseason content. I heard 29 other one of these episodes already. You're telling me nothing new. Which, hey, if that's the way you listen to it, good on you.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening. We appreciate you made it through all 30 if you're listening to this one last. If you're listening to this one first, though, there's many more to come. And we really hope you enjoy these. We're trying to do these just to give everyone a brief primer. Maybe you're not super familiar on a team. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, I really want to watch more of Vancouver. I really want to watch more of Dallas. I really want to watch more of Orlando City. But I don't know anything about them. Hopefully, these little preseason previews can give you enough context that you can go into watching them and even say, hey, I know what to look for.
Informational interviews.
Yeah. Or maybe you're doing chores around the house and you're like, I need something in the background. In which case, hey, thanks for thinking of us. We're glad that you like our voices enough to hear us in the background.
Absolutely. All right. Well, shall we get started?
Yes, I suppose we shall, Gavin. So let me pull out my official script here. Yes, question number 1 for Gavin. Could you please name the time and the place for which you became aware that you had a deep love for soccer and specifically Orlando? No, okay, Gavin. Let's start where it actually makes sense to start. So it's a preseason type content here. Let's talk about what's been going on in the off season for Orlando. Big changes. Obviously, Oscar Pareja, not a big change. He stays around. But what has gone on that someone who is jumping in and knows nothing about Orlando City would need to know going into this season?
Yeah, I'll start with just some historical context, just long term. Oscar Pareja came in. Before he came in, we never finished in a playoff position. He came in 2019, 2020 offseason, somewhere around there. 2020 offseason. Yeah, his first season was the COVID season. And we never finished in a playoff position, and we needed a whole turnaround. We got a new front office. We got Oscar Pareja. The front office the year before was brought in, and it was spearheaded by Luis Muzzi, who was the front office in Dallas when Oscar Pareja was in Dallas. And so we got Luis Muzzi, we got Ricardo Morera as a head scout, and he probably had a different title, but that was his role. They've both since been promoted. They are both proving their worth in the league as one of the better front offices in the league, in my opinion. So we make the playoffs consistently now. We're a competitive team consistently, as you guys have seen over the last few years. And part of that competitiveness has come from hitting on certain players in the transfer market Facundo Torres being mainly one of them. Also doing well in the draft, Daryl Dike, Duncan McGuire, thinking of players like that. Defensively, Robin Janssen, he's been a transfer that's been a major success. Schlegel's been a major success as a center back as well. Cartagena and Araujo in defensive midfield. We've been hitting on a lot of transfers, and now it's been multiple years, and we're kind of phasing out of that first wave of transfers that came in under this uh, regime. That's the word I was looking for. And now we need to revamp. So we lose Facundo Torres in the offseason. That's a big one, probably the biggest one. And we need to revamp. We also lost, a couple of those smaller players who you don't really think about. We got a guy named Gaston Gonzalez, actually, who we signed, and his last game for his club before he signed with us, he tore his ACL, played a couple games with us, and he just wasn't the same player. So he's gone now. Hein Gickling Bruseth was signed in. Why that keeps happening, Russell? Anyways, Hein Gickling Bruseth was signed in the expansion draft, surprisingly, and so we're down a midfielder there. And then other than that, it's just other players you haven't heard of leaving the team. So the biggest one is Facu Torres leaving. And coming in, we now have his replacement announced today, Marko Pasalic out of Croatia, one of the teams in Croatia. And we also have another winger in Nicolas Rodriguez out of South America. I think it's Argentina. Can't remember which specific league, but somewhere in South America. And he's a young under 22 initiative, promising winger as well. And so getting two wingers in to try and replace Facu Torres has been the big moves this offseason. That being said, we were obviously in the conference finals last year, and we failed to get to the final, even though we were at home, which was disappointing. And so we sell our best player. Feelings of a little bit of going backwards at the moment, with a couple of with us looking light in midfield and losing our chief goal scorer is what's going on at the moment. That answer your question, Russell?
It answered my question and so much more, Gavin.
Wonderful.
Here's my question, though. Which of these players that you're losing, because you've lost a fair number of players, if it's not going to be Facundo Torres, I'm going to rule that one out. It's the low-hanging fruit. Which of these are you actually going to miss the most?
I mean, no one of real note other than Torres left. It's honestly, it's Bruseth. It was a surprise to the front office that he got selected. They weren't able to because he didn't play a minute last season, even though he was on the squad. We signed him in the summer, and he was on the bench a couple times, but we never played him, which was a real why aren't we playing him at all? Maybe he's just not that good. We don't know. But we had plans for him this season, was what the reporting is, and the front office was surprised that he got picked by San Diego FC, and they couldn't protect him because I think he didn't play for us yet. So that was a surprise, and that has left us short in the midfield. And then I've said it before a couple times now, Cartagena is injured and out for the season after his first preseason game injury. And so we're very short in midfield now. Obviously, we're linked with Atuesta. But other than Facu Torres, it's Bruseth because he was an unplanned departure, and now we're probably in the background scrambling to get 1 to 2 midfielders in of a high enough quality.
And I am glad you brought up the midfield, because one of the things that I noticed last year wasn't just the midfield. You frequently had, like, for instance, we talked about a center back that was brought in, and I'm blanking on his name, and he didn't win the starting job. He wasn't good enough. You had your backup who ends up winning the starting job. Have you done anything at all to address the defense and actually improve on that?
No, we kind of found the formula last season. Obviously, if you remember, we had a really rough start. We were close to the spoon race at one point in the season, down at the bottom of the East. But we found the formula with Rafael Santos on the left, being a more attack minded left back. Robin Jansson's been a rock for years, and I think he's our most capped player ever, or most appeared player ever for Orlando City. So he's fantastic. Schlegel is the backup center back going into every season, but due to injuries and just him being a competitive individual, he always wins the starting spot over this time it was David Brecalo. And he had an injury riddled season, as well as whenever he wasn't injured, he was going off to, I think it's Slovenia for the national team. I can't remember the exact, Slovakia or Slovenia, one of those. And so Brecalo's not always around, and so Schlegel steps up and does the job really well. And then on the right, we've been using someone we actually brought in as a midfielder, Dagger Don Thorhalson, has turned into one of the better right backs in the league, just in terms of his on the ball play. And defensively, he really isn't a liability too much either. So uh, the back line, I think, is good, even though center back wise, it's always been the front office likes to go with three really solid center backs, and then after that, it's like we make do. So like Kyle Smith, he's just a player who will play anywhere, essentially along the back line for us whenever needed. He's had many appearances at left back. He is a right back, but I think he's had more appearances for Orlando City at left back, funnily enough. And then he's played center back a couple times for us just because we needed it, because we're so short at center back at times. Maybe someone gets suspension and someone's out injured. Shoot, we're throwing Smith in there because we don't have any young center backs who we fully trust yet.
Is there a sense that that's going to change, Gavin? I mean, because if
Absolutely
you're
not.
okay, so you're short in midfield and you're on thin ice at center back.
We've been on thin ice at center back since 2020, my man, and
Oof.
we've gotten away with it. We've gotten to the playoffs. Now we haven't. Last season was the opportunity to get to the final. You could say the season before as well, when we finished second in the Supporter Shield rankings. We probably should have done better as well, but that was we faced Columbus in the playoffs, and Columbus was the only team winning the MLS Cup that season, so we got unlucky there. So yes, I would like one more, but I don't trust the front office to put one more player in there. Probably because they don't have the roster flexibility due to the roster rules. You have to have a short piece somewhere. One of your positions has to be short due to the roster rules.
Well, you've gone with a bold strategy to be short at center back.
Now we have three starting quality center backs, but but you lose two.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm a.
and it's very easy to lose two.
Mm-hmm. Cincinnati had two season-ending injuries on center backs last season, and we weren't even to the summer yet.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it can happen. You can get very lucky, or you can get very unlucky.
Yeah.
Well, Gavin, enough pontificating about where you guys are short. Tell me, Gavin, tell me some good news here. Is there any sign of maybe incoming moves that are going to make all of this better and or maybe like give you some relief on positions of need being filled?
So we're linked with. So we just signed Pasalic, DP
Hmm.
right winger. He replaces the hole in the squad from Faku. We'll see if he actually is as good as him and can meet his production, as well as if he can outdo his creativity. Because Faku wasn't a very creative player; he was more of a goal scorer. For the other area in the squad where we're light midfield, we are linked with Atuesta, the former LAFC defensive midfielder, and I hope we get that across the line. I don't think it's final yet. We're still negotiating with Palmeiras. Palmeiras want a the reporting is Palmeiras won a permanent deal. Orlando City won a loan. Probably because if he's permanent, it'll probably be a DP signing. And we don't have a DP slot open. I don't know if we can buy down one of our DPs. I think Ojeda might be like really close to a buy down. So we might be able to do something there. And we did just get 3 million GAM. Or, well, we might not have got 3 million GAM for Facu Torres, depending on the. I was looking at the roster rules earlier, and if you sell a DP, you can't attribute any of that money as GAM. So I don't know if that's in effect already, or if that went into effect today. I don't know. I'd have to look into it further. But maybe we didn't get 3 million GAM, I guess is what I'm saying from an Orlando City perspective. And we didn't have any other big sales. But I was really counting on that 3 million GAM to allow us to have a little bit more roster flexibility. So Out West is the only name linked that I've seen personally. And if we could pull that off, I'd feel much better going into the season.
Okay. So then, Gavin, look, you are very in touch and in tune with all the ongoings of Orlando. Some say you live and breathe Orlando City SC. What's the average fan talking about this offseason? Like, I'm talking like, what's the Orlando City SC fan group Facebook page, like that level of like fan, like what do fans care about this offseason? Yeah.
Orlando City Facebook page is full of degenerates. We stay away from the Facebook groups.
All right. Well, let's hypothetically say that you don't stay away from it and you're very in tune with what the average fan thinks. Like, I think there was a phenomenal quote from another guest that you'll hear at some point if you continue to listen to these, that the average fan of probably most of the teams is a family in the suburb. Like, it better or worse, right? That's where your average fan is in MLS.
So okay, people. So average fan, which I am not. Martin Ojeda, people grew to really like him as a DP, and so people are going to be looking to him to step up this season in Facu's absence. Obviously, Facu Torres leaving is the big one. Duncan McGuire lost his starting spot last season to Ramiro Enrique, and people love Duncan McGuire. He is a fan favorite. We did get him a new contract. If you missed that last season, if you remember, we were back and forth on selling him, and he did. We wanted to give him a new contract. He wanted to leave. We did agree to sell him. A whole bunch of drama on that front with Blackburn, I believe it was. And he came back and he was kind of in and out. I think he's been carrying an injury. And so I think another thing people will be talking about is, will Duncan get his starting striker spot back, or will he be a backup to Ramiro Enrique? Enrique is a streaky striker. He can go on hot streaks, score 6 goals in 6 games, and then go 5-6 games without a goal, essentially. He's still a contributor up top. He works hard, he presses, he battles, but he's kind of streaky. Other topics, kind of what I just spoke about, being light in midfield and wanting another midfielder would be the other main topic of consideration, I think.
So you're saying the average fans got at least that one right?
Yeah, they've got that. I mean, it's so clear. It's Araujo and Kyle Smith. That right back I was talking about. He sometimes covers defensive midfield, and when he covers defensive midfield, it's not great because he's not a defensive midfielder.
Sounds like you guys could use Yuya Kubo down on that roster.
We could use Yuya Kubo. Yeah. We could use a lot of players. And there are a lot of free agents out there that I'm surprised we haven't like gone and looked into or haven't been rumored talking to at a minimum. But we kind of stay out of the free agent market for the most part. We did get Nico Ladero last year, but other than that, we don't really look at the free agents across MLS.
Do you think, did Nico Ladero live up to the free agent expectations that may have been of him?
Okay, for me, he did. For people who may have just seen him as a name, probably not. So, like for the average fan, probably not. But I wanted him to be a backup. I wanted to be a quality player off the bench who could come in and change the game if we need to, and help close out the game. Just take minutes off of the starters. And towards the end of the season, we I don't know what we were doing, but we were starting both him and Muriel a lot at the start of last season, and neither of them have the legs to defend. And so it was just a disaster. And finally, we realized those guys can't be starters. They need to be impact players off the bench last half of games when the other players on the other team are tired. And ever since we kind of made that realization, he's been fine. And I'm happy to have him this season in that same role. Start a couple games here and there, but for the most part, you're coming off the bench.
Okay. So is the answer yes then? He did live up to the hype or
He lived up to my hype. He lived up to my hype.
So it sounds like the answer is no, because Gavin, we already established you're not the average fan.
I'm sure some people were expecting him to be 2022 Nico Ladera, whatever year it was, where he popped out for Seattle. But no, that was never going to be the case.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. I'm curious to see how Orlando approaches the free agent market then, although it sounds like they're a little bit gun shy on it. So very curious. Some good deals to be had there this year, though.
Yeah,
Who
I'd have to go
who'd you
look at
take?
the list.
Yeah, I mean,
Who's
there's
available? I'll go look real quick.
all right. Yeah, I mean, there's some good names out there. But there's always some good names out there, although the list is dwindling down because you saw the initial flurry of movement in the free agency stakes, i.e., Jeremy Bobasi. Great free agent signing.
So, oh, this is an out of date list. I'd have to I'd have to find a good solid list. Ring,
Okay.
did Ring get picked up? He
I
got picked
don't,
up, right?
maybe, I don't know if Alex Ring got picked up, but would be a good free agent pickup. Yeah, he had some good games for Austin last year.
Alexander Ring is still without a club.
I'd sign him. It's not a bad pickup.
So that would be a name that I would at a minimum have as a backup option within the squad
Yeah.
to
Kick the
help shore up.
tires.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not finding a big long list of free agents who are that's updated essentially.
Well, no worries then, Gavin. Well, how about this? Let me set you up for an easier question, okay? I want you to close your eyes with me. We're going to go to a very happy place, okay? Imagine you're sitting in the stands of Inter and Co Stadium, the home of Orlando City, not Inter Miami, and you're sitting there, you're in the wall's cheering, they're roaring. It's the playoffs. You guys are a home seed. You're like the fourth spot. You managed to just snag a home playoff spot in 2025 MLS Cup, and you're thinking back, you're like, oh, it was such a great season. We did all these things right. Like, give me three things that you think Orlando really needs to get right to get us to that vision of getting a home playoff spot.
Okay. Wonderful. What a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm.
DP production, all of them. Ojeda, Muriel off the bench, Pasalic, and
I love that qualifier, Gavin.
off the
I'm
bench.
yeah.
Do not start him. And then Rodriguez, the under 22 winger, comes in and it is better than expectations, I guess is what I'd say. Right now, I think expectations are backup under 22, really solid attacker to come in and compete with Pasalic. So DP production and specialty player production, I guess. Injury luck is another thing that will have to go our way. And lastly, a fast start to the season. Orlando City under Pareja, when he was first here, we would have fast starts and we would really struggle towards the end of the season and we would peter out and it'd be rough. Last couple seasons, we've had extremely slow starts and then we've picked up and figured out what we needed to do, and we've finished second in the Supporter Shield rankings and then in the conference finals, in the Eastern Conference finals. And so this year, I want to see us put it all together. I want to see a strong start to the season, a strong end to the season, and MLS Cup final, baby. Let's go.
Just as a tangent on that, Gavin, I like that you call it a strong start to the season because you can make the playoffs with a slow start to the season. Your likelihood of getting a home playoff spot is much lower. You can make the playoffs. So if you're a team that's just saying to themselves, like, doesn't really matter the start of the season, like, if your goal is to make playoffs as easy as possible on you, wrong. Look at St. Louis. St. Louis, in their season that they finished first, had a blistering hot start. It didn't matter that the wheels fell off towards the end of the season. They had built so much momentum that nobody could do anything about it.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great shout. If you want a home playoff spot, good start to the season is paramount. And teams are getting better.
Yes, they are, especially in the East. I think the start of the season, it's kind of like there's free points to pick up early on, especially with those teams in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Orlando City's, for the first time in 2 years, is not in CONCACAF Champions Cup, which has contributed to the slow start. And so this season we don't have that, and hopefully we take advantage and we can be one of the teams who have one of those strong starts, pick up 18 points in the first 7-8 games. That would be lovely.
Yeah, 18 points in 7 matches would be incredible.
Unrealistic. I know. I'm not saying I'm expecting that. That would be incredible.
You heard it here first. Lions Blog 1 expects 18 points from Orlando City's first 7 matches.
Whatever you say.
Yeah, I say that. Yeah. I am curious though at what your schedule looks like to start off with. As I say this, right? I mean,
why can't I remember?
Well, I'm remembering for you.
What a guy.
You have Philadelphia is your first match of the season, and it actually looks like you're at home. So you've got Philadelphia, Toronto, New York City FC, New York Red Bulls, DC United, LA Galaxy, and Philadelphia again as your first 7 matches. So, Gavin, I'll tell you right now, the 2 Philadelphia matchups, I feel quite confident in those for you, given the state of that roster right now.
Well, at the moment, yeah, but Carnell coming in and changing the system, even though the roster's a mess, like the pressing might cause us problems. And a team that presses in MLS, even though they're not great quality wise, they can outrun you, unfortunately, in terms of this league. So I'm not going to guarantee a win in that match specifically.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. Gavin guarantees wins for Orlando City over Philadelphia. You can take that one to the bank.
I guess if we are to go 18 points in 7 games, we would need to beat them at least once.
Right. Well, I think if you're going to do 18 points in 7 games, the one that you likely lose is away at LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
Probably. Because A, long flight, B, time change, C, away match at MLS Cup champions.
Yes. Yep.
That
without
is
Pooch. And without Pooch. I mean, it's a different LA Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
They do it for Ramirez now, but it's a different team.
It is a
different
team.
With Sean Davis now too, as well in the midfield.
I don't think that's as big of an impact.
Yeah. Probably not.
Yeah,
like for like almost different players, but like same position.
Right. No Pooch is the key loss there. But look, Gavin, this is not an LA Galaxy preview podcast.
My bad.
So we're sticking with Orlando City. And here's the thing, Gavin. So we're manifesting good thoughts right now, right? I'm gonna now have to ask you to engage in the unfortunate mental exercise of telling me why is it all going to go wrong? What is what is it that for all this positivity, you're looking at it and it's just like the obvious pitfall staring you right in the face that you're just like, please, I beg of you, front office, deal with this before we get too far into the season, or else we're not going to have any sort of long term success.
Um, my eyes point to the attack. Actually, that we're not able to generate enough chances and score the goals we need to score with the attackers we have. Ivan Angulo is a very hardworking left winger. He might as well be a left wing back at times, though, with how deep he comes. And it's important to the system, but he's not someone who's going to score 10 goals in a season. He's going to max out at 7, and that's a really good season for him. And then, if Pasalic and Rodriguez aren't scoring goals, Ojeda's not someone who's going to go score 20 goals either. He hasn't shown that yet, essentially. Maybe he explodes this season and takes on the role that Facu was excelling at as goal scorer, prime goal scorer, but may not be the case. And they're not Ojeda and Angulo aren't guys who are capable. They don't have that next level quality where they're going to dribble past a guy and two guys and then score. Usually they need to be the like getting onto the end of a ball if they're going to be the ones to score. I don't know enough about Pasalic to stay either way, and same with Rodriguez. Although Rodriguez looks like a tricky winger, I just don't know how that's going to translate into MLS. And then on the forward front, Enrique, again, hard worker, but not going to dribble past two guys and create his own goals. Duncan McGuire is kind of the same unless he hits really good form. We've seen him do that once or twice, but he needs service. And Luis Muriel, he's
Off the bench.
high quality player, but off the bench is where I'll go with that. So the attack doesn't gel, the attack doesn't work, would be the biggest reason for why Orlando City have their floor this season, which I do think is like a playoff play-in spot. 9th place, I think, is our floor. I do think we could go that low um, if
No
everything
lower.
goes wrong.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, if everything like literally like
Right, yeah.
injuries and the
If every
attack, like we're
every
down
single
in
player
13th,
tears their
but
ACL, and and you Orlando gets a transfer ban because they don't pay $700 to a team over like player rights from
yeah,
20 years ago, and then like all the players also go on strike that are still healthy because they're mad at Oscar Pereja still having a job. Like, but I think a realistic floor of 9. That's a
yeah.
good call. So what I am hearing though, last year I always jokingly said I'm taking under 1.5 goals on Orlando every single week, and I don't think that statement changes.
Well, with Oscar Pereira at the helm, it doesn't, unless Pasalic is an MVP caliber candidate,
Big ask.
MVP candidate caliber player. Yeah, big ask, big ask. So we'll see.
Yeah, I dig it. Well, Gavin, I hope that doesn't keep you up too much at night. I hope they get someone good for you.
No, I think that's why I was so disappointed that we didn't at least make the final because this past season, because this was our best opportunity facing New York Red Bulls at home. That was a winnable game. We just weren't good enough in it. And I at least wanted to see us make that final. I would have been fine with losing it. LA Galaxy were the favorites. We probably would have lost it. Um, but
At least get there.
At least get there, man. At least get there. And now, this upcoming season, it feels like we have a mountain to climb with Atlanta spending, Miami with Messi and friends. Columbus has gotten weaker, so that's helpful coming out of the East. But I'm rating Chicago a little bit. New England have reloaded with a lot of players, so they might be a little bit more competitive this season than they were last season. And so, new teams, new challenges, up and down. Some teams have gotten worse, some teams have gotten better. We'll see what happens, but it really felt like last season was the season to make the final.
I am curious, Gavin. What's your take on, like, are you going to get involved in any of like these cash player sales, cash trades for players? Like, does it seem like any of your guys could potentially be explored as like a move for someone else? Or are you maybe exploring, even if it's just like a depth guy, right? And it's like, oh, we don't want to give up Gam. We can't give up Gam. We'll give you a 500,000 for this guy.
So we were linked with a vendor, and
Hmm.
the reporting out of the club was we would only go for it if Martin Ojeda was sold. And he had interest from South America, but it didn't come to fruition. Now, could a team in MLS want Martin Ojeda on their roster and give us some money for him? I think so, but I don't think they would want him as a DP.
Mm.
And he's a DP right now. If they buy him, we would want DP level money. And while he's a good player, I think people would want him as a high TAM player versus a DP, seeing his output the last few seasons. And so it's our Ojeda out, Evander in was the idea. And then we've also been linked with Zendejas, the American attacking midfielder, I think, in Mexico. And so
That would be a big get.
that would be a big get, but I think that was, again, same position, Ojeda out, Zendejas in, I think. And so, yeah, I think that's where we are. I don't know of any other players we would sell. Maybe we would, if Maguire was a hot commodity and we wanted to sell him and get our money for him that we thought we were going to get from Blackburn because we need roster flexibility. I don't know. And then maybe we bring in a DP and buy down one of our DPs if that's possible. There's a whole sorts of things, but I think Ojeda or Maguire would be the ones to go at the moment.
And I'm assuming you're not going to buy out Muriel. I mean, I
I'd
look,
be surprised.
I, the fact that you're using a DP spot on someone who is a off the bench impact player seems egregious to me
It is
personally.
egregious.
And this is coming from someone whose team is paying Sergio Santos $1 million a year.
Yeah, Muriel's a big problem in the squad for me. Was excited when he came in, and then he started the season, and you can see his quality. You can see it. His first touch, his ability to dribble past a player. He is just so good on the ball. His off the ball is atrocious though, and we play with 10 men off the ball when he's on the field, unfortunately. And so he's only helpful in those late game situations where we need a goal. He really is. And we've really been playing him as like a left attacking midfielder for him to pass to a winger or a striker to help in creative build up, essentially. Because at the tip, at the top, he does nothing. He doesn't really show for the ball that much. When he gets it, he gets crowded out. And he's just a second striker type of player. And we aren't really using him in that capacity. We're using him more as a creator. I don't think we're going to buy him out. He's Colombian. Oscar Pereira is Colombian. Uh, there's a little bit of
Say
that
no
going
more. Yep.
on. Yeah,
Say
and
less.
plus he's a name, right? He's been known throughout his career. He's had a successful career, and it would feel kind of crazy to cut that kind of player from the squad. It really would.
Counterpoint, every single DP needs to contribute in this league.
Every single one. That more than the bench. They need to contribute serious output
Right.
and or contribute to like being an insanely good defensive midfielder or something like that. Yeah.
Right. but they need to be a player that is a nailed on starter.
Yes. Yep.
At
So
least we
yeah,
agree on that.
we do. Well,
All right.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Orlando
Well,
City
hey.
in a nutshell.
Well, let me throw a fun question your way then, just to end on. Okay, Gavin, we're gonna go back to your happy place. Okay, we're gonna go back. You're sitting in a suite in the MLS Cup playoffs. Orlando City are playing in front of you, and you're in this suite because you, Gavin, congratulations, have been promoted to the new director of marketing for Major League Soccer. And on the first week of the league, they actually came up to you and they said, Gavin, we need your creative genius. We need more people to care about MLS. We need a really clever marketing gimmick to bring in new fans. What's the cheesy thing or gimmicky thing, or what is it that you're doing to attract a new type of fan or attract new eyeballs or new attention, or something like that?
I'm not good at these things, man.
Well, you gotta be. You just became the director of marketing.
Yeah. I would. So we are positioned, luckily, as Miami's rival, and
Hmm.
so I would try to hit the demographic of soccer fan who loathes Lionel Messi.
So you're going for Ronaldo fans, is what you're
I'm going
saying.
for Ronaldo fans and Messi haters. Yes, that is what I would do. We are Miami's rival. We are the enemy as it pertains to Miami and Messi. And so Real Madrid fans, it doesn't have to be Real Madrid fans. They don't like Busquets and Alba and Messi. So I would do a friendly with Real Madrid. um, and I would say we are
Those tickets would
Messi's
be
rival.
$500.
Probably, yeah, probably. But I would go there. That's where I would go, to hopefully bring in a fan base of Messi haters.
You know what? That is respectable, Gavin. See, you were
Yeah,
fine at this. That was a
that's
great
fine.
answer to the
Yeah,
question. Yeah.
yeah. There we go.
Awesome. Well, Gavin, thank you very much for linking up to talk about Orlando City. You're a very busy man, what with your primary podcast, the MLS Now podcast. So,
Yeah.
obviously, anytime we can get you away from them to be on here, the MLS Now podcast, and you talk about soccer, it's always appreciated. But hey, just a reminder, if you're an Orlando City fan, you want to find more Orlando City content, you can find Gavin on social media at Lions Blog One. You can also just follow the MLS Now podcast as well. Gavin's on here basically every single week, sharing his knowledge and sharing his insight about not just Orlando City, but MLS as a whole. So, Gavin, thanks as always for being on, and listeners too. Thanks for tuning in, and we really hope you do enjoy more of the preseason content that's coming out hot and heavy over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, shout out to Russell and Bryce and the whole team for coordinating that and scheduling that and getting those recorded. Really appreciate it, guys. All right.
Awesome.
Well, let's get out of here.
Yep. Till next time, folks.
Till next time.